j'ai du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The thing that Michael Schmidt reports here, though, in this new book that is most unnerving, though, is directly about the president himself. And it's something that we all thought had happened, but it hasn't. And ever since I got a hold of Schmidt's book, knowing that I was going to be able to interview him about this tonight, again, the book comes out tomorrow, I have tossed and turned about this because I find this very upsetting and unsettling. Here's the major news here. This is from, I'll quote Schmidt directly here. Quote, "It would take me a year to put together the pieces of what I believe is one of the most important parts of the Mueller report, what it did not contain. Back in May 2017, the FBI had opened a two-pronged investigation into whether Trump obstructed justice and whether he was a Russian agent. When Mueller took over the investigation, the acting FBI director, Andy McCabe, had briefed him on this. Over nearly 200 pages, Mueller's team took on the question of whether Trump had obstructed justice. But nowhere in the unredacted version of the report was there a thorough examination of Trump's ties to Russia. The report said nothing about whether Trump posed a threat to national security or whether his longstanding ties to Russia were problematic." Schmidt says, quote, "In reporting for this book, I spoke to several people involved in the Mueller investigation. They told me that investigators never undertook a significant examination of Trump's personal and business ties to Russia. For instance, they said, investigators knew of financial documents that might show Trump's ties to Russia, but they never pursued them." Mueller didn't explain himself along these lines. If the American public or official Washington had expected the Mueller investigation to answer questions of the president's loyalties that only a counterintelligence investigation could answer, it would not. In reporting for this book, Schmidt says, I discovered why. In May 2017, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein had appointed Robert Mueller to pick up where acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe and the FBI had left off in their two investigations, the obstruction investigation and the counterintelligence investigation. But in handing off the investigation from McCabe and the FBI to Mueller, Rod Rosenstein had suspended the counterintelligence investigation into Trump. Again, this is the investigation basically into whether Trump is a foreign agent, whether he is compromised by a hostile foreign power. According to Michael Schmidt's new book, Rod Rosenstein called off that part of the investigation. Rosenstein, quote, believed that the decision by McCabe and top counterintelligence investigators at the FBI to open the inquiry into whether Trump was a Russian agent in the first place had been precipitous and premature. Without informing McCabe, Rosenstein told Mueller that his investigation should concentrate on whether crimes were committed. It should not be a fishing expedition into whether President Trump was a Russian agent. If Mueller's prosecutors wanted to expand their investigation, they could come back to Rosenstein and ask for the authority to do so. But Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein had foreclosed any deeper inquiry before the investigation even began. Just trying to factor this into what we have learned over the past few years, right? I mean, there has been public reporting, right, that we've all been aware of for years now, that the FBI opened a criminal investigation into the Russian interference in our election and a counterintelligence investigation into, bluntly, whether the president is or was a Russian agent, whether the president is doing the bidding of a hostile foreign power, whether they either have leverage over him or he has otherwise signed up with them. When that second investigation didn't turn up in the Mueller report, we assumed that Mueller hadn't done it, but that investigation had been continued by the FBI outside of Mueller's purview. Indeed, on page 13 of the Mueller report, Mueller and his team said that any counterintelligence stuff that they turned up over the course of their investigation, they fed back to the FBI for the FBI to handle it on their own, separate and apart from what Mueller were doing. But now in this book, Michael Schmidt from the New York Times reports that Mueller didn't investigate the president's ties to Russia and whether he was compromised, including by any financial involved with them. But neither did the FBI. Rosenstein told them they couldn't do it, and so they didn't do it either. The FBI apparently thought that Mueller was doing it. Mueller thought that the FBI was doing it. Nobody did it. The Asylum intelligence report we just learned 2 weeks ago didn't look at it either. Nobody's done it. All these years in, no entity of the U.S. government has ever investigated whether the president is compromised by his relationship with Russia. All these years in. Why not?
It is Tuesday, the 1st of September of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world, and if you use too much, you will be in fire. Yeah, and there's not going to be a happy face in lava like that volcano in Kilauea. Did you see those photographs of that helicopter flying over? Yeah, it's almost like looking in, up in the sky at a cloud and seeing some sort of animal. Or, oh, look, there's a cute bunny in the clouds. Well, now we got smiley faces in lava. Like that's supposed to be a good thing. Okay. Well, Trump is threatening us again with complete annihilation. Is it really off base to consider that Trump thought that if he withheld information about the COVID-19, the pandemic, that because in the beginning he believed it was only going to hit blue states. Now, would it be out of line that he was attempting a form of genocide in hopes that, well, people in blue states are the only ones getting it and they'll be the only ones dying? Now, wouldn't that be considered genocide if you were targeting particular groups of people? Is that off base to consider that? I don't know anymore. It used to be somewhat of a joke in a way. I mean, because how could anybody really consider doing that? And when you look at this guy, I think all cards are on the table. I think we really have to consider that this guy is not just a wannabe mob boss. He's a murderous mob boss. Genocidal maniac, I think you might want to call him. Oh no, are we like maybe being too harsh on him? No. He hasn't been, he's never been dealt with harshly ever in his whole life. It's about time. I don't care if he's a doddering old crazy Joe Bananas. That's what he's going for, the crazy Joe Bananas defense. He'll be coming to the Nuremberg trials in a wheelchair with spit coming down the side of his mouth, like a drooling. He'll be drooling. All right, well, I suppose all of that is just mere conjecture. But now we have actual reportage, once again, because this has been in the public domain, that the Russians, Giulianov, broke this once again, and this has been in the public domain for a bit of time. Russian hackers have the voting rolls of, 170,000 Michigan voters? All their information, the kind that you would need to be able to flip votes on a hackable voting machine? Okay, but since, we don't get to have any information or intel about hostile foreign powers trying to control our elections, we're not supposed to know about it, apparently, according to Ratcliffe. And then you got this wacko Rod Rosenstein. I kept telling everybody Rosenstein's going to turn out to be a weasel. And he was a weasel the whole time. Which beggars the question that I asked at the top. Really? Is Rosenstein working for Vlad? Or is he a Vichy collaborator? Just the regular, run-of-the-mill GOP Vichy collaborator. You make a counterintelligence investigation go away. And then this guy ends up working for, the Israeli law firm, security firm that has been implicated by our intelligence service for also being involved in the 2016 election, FUBAR, working with Cambridge Analytica and Parscali, and guess who else? Yeah, Facebook. Now we got that little twerp, Steve Scalise. God, I've always hated that guy. Everybody gave him a pass when he got shot during the softball game. Was it softball or? Yeah, I think it was softball. When the wacko guy came on the baseball field and started shooting everybody, and Scalise got pegged, and he got taken down, and he suffered badly and took a while to recover. And everybody thought, maybe Steve Scalise will soften Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise, when he ran for office, said that he's just a more palatable David Duke. You can not only taste me, but you can take me whole. Yes, I'm a dapper David Duke. So now this guy is producing deep fake videos for people who have ALS. Ady Barkan, he deep faked Ady Barkan. Who does that? A ghoul. Just because this guy got shot and suffered badly, no more passes for that freak. How dare he? There's going to be a lot of hard work de-Trumpifying our government. They came in whining about the deep state. And you know what? They were projecting. They're making a deep state. When you got a Ratcliffe, when you got a Rosenstein, deep sixing a counter-intel investigation into Russian manipulation of our elections. And we're not talking about an influence campaign anymore. We are talking about the actual manipulative or manipulated flipping of votes. The one thing everybody was afraid to talk about because it was just, that can't be. But now we don't get to have any intel about that because it might hurt Trump's chances of winning. Damn right it would. Well, we need to wrest control from these freaks. I know they got the terror caravans running around now. Silent majority. The most loudest, whiniest minority of freaks ever in the history of American politics. Even more than the Law and Order types back during Nixon's day. Jeez. They're going to have a hard time learning Cyrillic. They really are. When all contracts are in Cyrillic, and if you can't read Cyrillic, well, I guess your property just reverts over to Vlad. He owns it now. You doubt me? You haven't watched Red Dawn, have you? You'll see. What's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, good. In a setback to Trump's immigration policies, a federal judge blocked border protection agents from screening asylum seekers because they're not qualified. And it's the wrong department. And Customs and Border Protection are full of racists and Nazis anyway. They shouldn't be even allowed to be a part of our American law enforcement community. Why are they? Purge it. Georgia was ordered by a federal judge to extend its deadline to accept mail-in ballots for the November general election, and not a moment too soon. And Bill Barr's COVID-19 nursing home inquiry is nakedly corrupt. Well, of course, if Bill Barr's involved in it. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Voice of America journalists protest moves by the outlet's new chief that endangers their reporters at home and abroad. Feature or a bug? I think it's a feature. And The heads of Hungary's top arts university have quit amid the imposition of a state-controlled board that undermines the school's autonomy. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link, and it is, of course, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then hopefully notice the link to our Patreon page, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you not only help us pay our bills and let us fly under the radar, but you also allow us to fulfill our civic duty, and that's Resistance Radio, which we have been doing for almost 10 years. Oh, my. And when I say 10 years, that's 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio broadcasting. Oh, no, they're not going to shut us up. They will not silence our voices. And you know what else? We vote. And we encourage all of you to vote, too. And vote down ticket. Remember, you better vote like your life depends on it, because it does. And this isn't hyperbole like all the other times. Nope, this is a very important election, and we need to wrest control of our country from a hostile foreign power. And I don't know, it could be powers. Man, they're going to partition the United States just like Man in the High Castle if we're not careful. Okay, and it won't be Japan. But it'll be something along the Pacific Rim, and we won't like it. No matter how many smiley faces you put in the hot lava. Indeed. So thank you for your generosity. Some of you have been sending the equivalent of an espresso-type coffee drink, the cost of that, and we stretch those dollars beyond compare. And thank you to all of you for your generosity in helping us over these many years. And if there are some of you out there who are able to afford an espresso-type coffee drink in these times of peril and can afford to send it our way, we encourage you to do it because, hey, nothing is free. Nothing. They don't give away anything. Everything goes up in price. Bills go up, even during a pandemic. How dare they? If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple because Tom takes care of it. And you can find our Twitter handle at Netroots Radio. How simple is that? Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam on Twitter. And go ahead, follow me there because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that out on social media like Twitter. And you could also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And most importantly, please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, or is it Apple Podcasts? I can't figure it out. One's one and one's the other, or are they both the same? Anyway, you can find it on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. And thank you for doing so. All righty. Let's dive into this first offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It comes out of the Associated Press by Elliot Spaggett. A federal judge yesterday, Monday, blocked U.S. Customs and Border Protection employees from conducting the initial screening for people seeking asylum, dealing a setback to one of the Trump administration's efforts to rein in asylum. Wow. People coming here because their lives are threatened. We have to ring that in. Jesus. The nationwide injunction will likely have little, if any, immediate impact because the government has effectively suspended asylum during the coronavirus pandemic, citing public health concerns. The Trump administration argued that designated CBP employees are trained comparably to asylum officers at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, another agency within the DHS. And U.S. District Judge Richard J. Leon in Washington disagreed. I think that's putting it mildly. He wrote in a 22-page decision, poppycock. He actually put that in a legal opinion. Poppycock. The training requirements cited in the government's declaration do not come close to being comparable to the training requirements of full asylum officers. Leon, who was appointed by Bush II, said CBP employees get 2 to 5 weeks of distance and in-person training, while asylum officers get at least 9 weeks of formal training. 5 weeks, the Border Patrol guys get for some online training and, a couple hours in person. And the asylum officers get 9 weeks of actual face-to-face formal training. Okay, I don't want to be putting down trade schools. I don't want to be putting down community colleges, but this is the equivalent or the difference between going to a 2-year community college or even worse, healed, versus getting a graduate degree. Okay, let's be clear. At a reputable, accredited university. Representatives of Homeland Security and Justice Department did not immediately respond to requests for comments. Now, Leon also cast doubt on whether Customs Border Protection, a law enforcement agency that includes the Border Patrol, could do screenings in a non-adversarial manner as regulations require. Of course not. They're there to try to keep people from coming here. You think you're in danger at home? Wait till you come here. We're going to throw your kids in an icebox baby gulag. Let them catch the flu if they don't die from COVID first. And where will you be? I don't know, but you won't have your kids. Lawyers for mothers and their children from Mexico, Ecuador, and Honduras who failed the screening, known as credible fear interview, in which they must persuade officials they have a credible fear of persecution in their home country, argued that Customs Border Protection employees were not authorized to do the work and lacked training. This decision puts an end to the sham process of using adversarial Border Patrol agents to conduct highly sensitive interviews with asylum seekers, said Julie Carpenter, an attorney for the Turia Justice Center, which sued on behalf of asylum seekers. The judge did not address other arguments, including that the measure was invalid because CBP Commissioner Mark Morgan is serving in an acting capacity and lacks authority under federal law. You would think that would be a major bugaboo, but why? Why is it not? The Government Accountability Office, you know that as a congressional watchdog, said earlier this month that Homeland Security Department's top 2 officials, also in acting roles, are ineligible to run the agency because they were improperly appointed under federal law. Now, Homeland Security strongly disagreed. Trump nominated Chad Wolf, the acting secretary, to the permanent job last week. Oh, better late than never, huh? CBP training began last year, and as of February, 91 employees were doing initial screenings, according to a report. They approved 37% of people over a 12-month period that ended in May, compared with 64% of the USCIS asylum officers, which means obviously to Trump that his guys are doing a good job. back of the AP brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A federal judge ordered Georgia to extend its deadline for accepting mail-in ballots for November's general election from the close of polls on Election Day until 3 days later. Oh, my God. Georgia law says absentee ballots must be received by the close of polls on Election Day. U.S. District Judge Eleanor Ross ordered that absentee ballots that are postmarked by Election Day and arrive at county election offices by 7 p.m. 3 business days later are to be counted. The New Georgia Project, a voter registration group, and several individual voters had sued to demand the deadline extension and other changes. Ross declined to order any of the other changes they sought. New Georgia Project CEO Nusef Ufat applauded the judge's ruling, saying in a statement that it further confirms that we have a living, breathing democracy that responds to the changing needs of society. The Secretary of State's office plans to immediately appeal the ruling because we don't want people to vote. What do you think this is, America? Deputy Secretary of State Jordan Fuchs said, "Extending the absentee ballot receipt deadline is a bad idea that will make it nearly impossible for election officials to complete their required post-election tasks in the timeline that is required by law," she said in a statement. Did she now? Lawyers for the state had argued that a later deadline could interfere with election officials' ability to perform audits and other post-election tasks by certification deadlines. Ross noted that Georgia election officials received a record number of absentee ballot requests for the June primary election after Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger encouraged Georgians to vote by mail amid concerns about the coronavirus pandemic. With the virus outbreak still going, there will likely be even more absentee ballot requests for the November general election, the judge wrote. Even in the absence of an ongoing pandemic, absentee ballots have been rejected in past elections because they were received after the deadline. The plaintiffs have demonstrated that Georgia voters can be and have been disenfranchised by the current receipt deadline through no fault of their own, Ross wrote. Ross wrote in the order that she is reluctant to interfere with Georgia's statutory election machinery, but she said the risk of disenfranchisement is great and the narrowly tailored remedy of extending the deadline by 3 business days is appropriate. Extending the deadline would ensure that voters who receive their ballots shortly before Election Day are able to mail their ballots without fear that their vote will not count. The lawsuit alleged that 5 aspects of Georgia law on absentee ballots can disenfranchise lawful voters in violation of their constitutional rights. And I would add once again, that's a feature, not a bug. And Margot Schlanger of Slate bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Last week, the Department of Justice sent widely publicized letters to the governors of 4 states, Michigan, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, seeking information about nursing homes and coronavirus infections. The DOJ justified the request as part of an evaluation of whether to open a formal investigation under the Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act. This does not appear to be an ordinary independent investigation, though. In fact, there's every reason to believe the DOJ letters are partisan attacks on opponents of Trump. The backdrop of all this is the COVID-19 pandemic's devastating effect on life in nursing homes. The pandemic has hit nursing homes hard and highlighted the inhumanity of our system of shutting away elderly and disabled people in isolated, congregate institutions. The New York Times estimates that at least 68,000 people have died due to COVID in nursing homes and other long-term facilities. 41% of the total number of deaths attributable to the virus in this country. The devastation underscores a truth we have known for years. Institutions separated from the mainstream of society, nursing homes, long-term care facilities, psychiatric hospitals or jails and prisons, cause intense harm to the people who are confined there. They rigidly control the lives of their residents, limiting such mundane daily liberties as the choice of when to turn out the light at night or with whom to eat dinner. They often limit opportunities for employment, education, and personal development, and they frequently harm the physical and mental health of those who must live there, with the tragic consequences we are seeing today. Government investigations of the poor conditions at congregate institutions and efforts to promote community-based alternatives so that individuals would not be forced to live in those facilities would be very welcome. The pandemic makes the need of such action especially acute. That is not, however, what the DOJ's actions are about. Instead, the department is acting in a transparently political manner. Throughout the pandemic, the DOJ has failed to take key steps to use the CRIPA Act to protect residents of congregate facilities. Last week's letters, aimed at governors who have vocally criticized Trump's response to the pandemic and timed amid the RNC, will do nothing meaningful to protect those residents. Nursing homes are key locations for the spread of COVID-19, but the DOJ's authority under CRIPA extends to only a tiny slice of those facilities. The statute applies only to institutions that are operated by state or local governments, but the overwhelming majority of people in nursing homes are in privately operated facilities. In New York, for example, only 28 out of the state's more than 600 nursing homes are public. And it's far from coincidence that all four governors who received these letters are Democrats. The state with the worst per capita coronavirus death rate in nursing homes, according to federal data, is Massachusetts. But its Republican governor received no similar letter. Same for Mississippi, Maryland, and Arizona. All are in the top 10 in death rate. All have Republican governors, yet none received a DOJ letter. New York and Michigan rank 11th and 12th on this metric. Well, indeed. It looks like Trump's henchman, it looks like Trump's Torquemada is doing his job. And I think that we should stop them. If not now, come November 3rd. At least we can put the machinery of government, the wheels grinding inexorably to their removal in January. All right, let's go to our break. And when we get back from that break, well, I'm pontificating, and it's only Tuesday. When we get back from our break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Hi, I'm Scientific American Assistant News Editor Sarah Lewin Fraser, and here's a short piece from the August 2020 issue of the magazine in the section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some non-coronavirus stories from around the globe. From Canada, a new study models how a gigantic morphing blob of liquid iron in Earth's outer core underneath the Canadian Arctic is losing its grip on the North Magnetic Pole. A second, intensifying blob below Siberia is pulling the pole away. From Scotland, a geologic dating effort suggests the fossil of a millipede-like creature found on the island of Kerala formed 425 million years ago, making it possibly the oldest known fossilized land animal. Older land animals have been spotted indirectly through preserved tracks. From Tanzania, researchers discovered Africa's largest ever collection of fossilized human footprints, left in volcanic mud about 10,000 years ago. Many of them came from a group of 17 people, mostly women, all walking in the same direction. From Norway, archaeologists are excavating a 20-meter Viking ship buried below a farmer's field to stop a wood-eating fungus from destroying it. Ground-penetrating radar had found the ship in 2018, and a new wood sample analysis revealed that it could not be preserved underground. From Zambia and Mongolia, this spring a satellite-tagged cuckoo completed an epic 12,000-kilometer journey from one country to the other. It had originally been tagged in Mongolia in 2019 and traversed 16 countries in its round-trip migration. From Antarctica, scientists found that king penguin excrement releases nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas. It forms as soil bacteria eat the droppings' nitrogen-rich compounds. That was Quick Hits. I'm Sarah Lewin Fraser.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Gaines. As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Dr. Joe Brazee is a researcher with CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. He's joining us today to discuss the importance of getting the flu vaccine. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, let's start with how long does the flu season last?
In general, flu seasons will last for several months in the United States at the national level. Each year it begins in the fall, usually peaks between January and March, and ends in the spring. But the timing of flu season is unpredictable, especially at the local level. So because we can't tell for sure when it will start, when it will peak, and when it will end in every community, we want to make sure that people get vaccinated as early as possible when the flu vaccines become available in the late summer and early fall.
Well, who should get vaccinated?
Everyone 6 months of age and older should get vaccinated against the flu each and every year. This is especially important for people at high risk of complications or severe flu if they get infected.
Which groups are at higher risk for complications from the flu?
Well, some people are at especially higher risk for severe flu or complications. These are people who are very young, like kids under 5 years of age, anybody 65 years and older, and people with underlying health disorders like heart disease, lung disease, kidney disease, or diseases of the immune system, and pregnant women.
Joe, how effective is the vaccine for preventing flu?
Well, vaccine is the single best way to protect you and your family from the flu each year. Most years, the vaccine reduces a person's chance of getting the flu and complications from the flu by about 50 to 70%. But how well it works can vary from season to season and by person. So remember that vaccine is one of 3 ways you can protect yourself against the flu. The other ones are good hygiene, like hand washing, covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, and finally, medications. There are medications that your doctor can prescribe to treat the flu if you get it.
Are there any side effects from getting vaccinated?
Well, there are 2 types of flu vaccines. First, the shots. The most common side effects with the flu shots are soreness or redness in your arm for a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. The nasal spray vaccines can cause runny nose or congestion or low-grade fever in some people for, again, about a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. So these side effects are mild compared with the disease itself, which causes hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations and tens of thousands of deaths each year in the United States. Remember that the vaccine is the safest and most effective way to prevent flu each and every year.
Joe, where can listeners get more information about the flu vaccine?
We'll go to cdc.gov/flu.
Thanks, Joe. I've been talking today with CDC's Dr. Joe Brazee about the annual flu vaccine. Remember, everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Robert Gaines for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Top regulatory officials in Trump's government keep chanting the same one-word mantra: deregulate, deregulate, deregulate. Day after day, these agency bosses have been liberating greedy business interests to do their damnedest to us consumers, workers, the environment, and even to our chicken dinner. Yes, chicken. Instead of Kentucky Fried or tacos con pollo, they're serving up chicken a la avian leukosis. That's chicken infected with a virus that produces cancerous tumors and lesions on the birds. In July, the U.S. Agriculture Department's Food Safety and Inspection Service rubber-stamped a demand by Tyson Foods and other multi-billion-dollar meat conglomerates to deregulate chicken processing rules so they can sell chickens diseased with avian leukosis for human consumption. And no, the huge brand-name marketers would not even be burdened by having to put a right-to-know label on the package so we consumers could know what we're buying. As always, the industry line is, "It's perfectly safe. Trust us." No. Their claim is that slaughterhouse line workers can simply cut out any tumors they see, then process the rest of the animal. There are 2 problems with this claim. First, avian leukosis can be a systemic disease passing through the blood, so slicing tumors doesn't necessarily eliminate the virus. Second, Line workers don't have time to see tumors, much less remove them, since Trump's corporate-hugging regulators have also allowed poultry factories to speed up their processing lines to 175 birds per minute. This means each worker handles up to 3 chickens a second. As Lyndon Johnson used to say about such political hokum, they can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. To learn more, go to Food and Water Watch, foodandwaterwatch.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Freedom of expression is protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution. One benefit of freedom of expression is that it helps to maintain representative democracy. For example, individual citizens participate in running our country by electing their representatives to Congress and other government officials. Citizens can also participate in making decisions about government policies. To make wise choices, you need to have good information. Free expression does not guarantee complete or accurate information, but it increases the chances of getting such information. Another benefit of freedom of expression is that it helps to bring about peaceful social change. Freedom of expression allows you to try to influence public opinion by persuasion without feeling you have to resort to violence to make changes. Also, if you have the opportunity to express your opinions freely, you might be more willing to accept government decisions, even decisions you do not agree with. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Earlier this year, President Donald Trump labeled the United States Postal Service a joke. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Let's start with a factual correction. The Postal Service has been a lifeline of democracy in the United States since it was established in 1775 by the Second Continental Congress with Benjamin Franklin as the first Postmaster General. After the American Revolution, the Constitution, as adopted, and as it remains today, specifies as one of Congress's enumerated powers the power to establish post offices and post roads. In this pivotal election year, shaped by a global pandemic, there is nothing remotely funny about the administration's plans and actions to gut the Postal Service, which is essential to the timely delivery of ballots, not to mention the delivery of census data, COVID supplies, and needed prescriptions, among other things. The House of Representatives has passed the Delivering for America Act, which would prevent the administration from gutting the Postal Service and pay for the Postal Service to maintain its previous levels of service until the COVID crisis has passed. Saving our Postal Service will promote the general welfare and help secure the blessings of liberty. And so the Senate should pass, and the President should sign, the Delivering for America Act. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1893. That was the day that the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers and Iron Shipmakers of America was founded in Chicago. This joined 2 earlier Boilermaker unions into one. They decided to establish their headquarters in Kansas City, Kansas. 2 years later, the Boilermakers affiliated with the American Federation of Labor. The union represents members of 250 lodges in the United States and Canada. At the turn of the 20th century, the Boilermakers had about 8,500 members. But their membership expanded, especially during World War II, as shipbuilding grew for the war. By 1944, there were more than 350,000 Boilermakers. In 1954, they merged with the International Brotherhood of Blacksmiths, Drop Forgers, and Helpers and expanded their name to include these groups of workers. But what exactly is a Boilermaker? According to the union's website, the term can have many meanings. It might refer to a Purdue University student or alumni, whose football team started going by the name of the Boilermakers in 1891. Or, Boilermaker might refer to dropping a shot of whiskey into a draft beer and drinking it all at once. But for the labor movement, a Boilermaker is someone that constructs and repairs boilers and the other workers who are part of the union. These might include blacksmiths, forgers, shipbuilders, cement workers, stove workers, metal polishers, and numerous other job descriptions. The Boilermaker's logo reflects these workers. It includes images of a ship, a worker working on a boiler, and a blacksmith's anvil. Below the images are found the words unity, progress, and protection, declaring the mission of the union and its members.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting to be a tad warmer today, about 100. Yes, we're starting our triple-digit run for the next 10 days or so. Overnight lows will be in the mid to low 60s. Highs tomorrow will be in the low 100s. Sunny all day today with winds out of the north-northeast at 5 to 10. Shifting tonight out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 with clear skies and sunny skies tomorrow and hot. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked from 774 to 811 with 2 deceased. And I will keep saying it, that is an undercount on the deceased. Ragweed pollen is rated low outside the mothership right here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is rated good at 27 parts per million, and the daytime UV index remains high at 7. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.03 inches, visibility is at 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Yes, they do. All righty. Oh, it looks like London is 70 degrees and sunny. How nice. Paris is 71 and sunny. We're talking September, August. It's usually very humid there this time of year. Rome is 80 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 92 and fair. Kabul is 75 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 78 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 53 degrees and clear. San Francisco in California, of course, is 53 degrees Fahrenheit with, 55 degrees with smoke because of all the wildfires. And New York is 72 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Matthew Lee of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A group of journalists at Voice of America is protesting moves made by the U.S.-funded outlet's new chief that they say are endangering their colleagues and the international broadcaster's credibility as a news source. In a letter to VOA management, 14 senior VOA journalists expressed deep concern and profound disappointment with steps U.S. Agency for Global Media head Michael Pack has taken that they say also threaten to harm American national security. The signatories said they were compelled to express our profound disappointment with the actions and comments of the chief executive officer of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which endanger the personal security of VOA reporters at home and abroad, as well as threatening to harm U.S. national security objectives. They cited a litany of moves they deemed problematic, including a purge of AGM executives, the dismissal of foreign journalists, and comments Pack has made denigrating VOA and its sister outlets, along with their employees, since he took over in early June. At least 16 foreign VOA journalists will be forced to leave the country in the coming weeks unless their visas are renewed. Voice of America has taken no action to renew them, citing alleged security lapses in the visa approval process and a need to implement reforms in hiring practices. Congressional aides say they believe roughly 70 employees, many of whom were hired for their critical foreign language expertise, may be ultimately affected. Given these concerns, we fear that the current USA GM leadership is failing not only the news organizations of Voice of America, the journalist said, and our audiences, but also our stakeholders, including the American public. Pack, a conservative filmmaker, ally of Trump and one-time associate of former Trump political advisor Steve Bannon, took the helm of Voice of America in June and has made no secret of his intent to shake up the agency. His moves, however, have been criticized by both Democratic and Republican lawmakers who control the agency's budget.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The management of Hungary's prestigious University of Theatre and Film Arts resigned in protest over the imposition of a government-appointed board they say will undermine the school's autonomy. Prime Minister Viktor Orban's supporters and pro-government journalists have long argued that after he won a third strong mandate in 2018, it was time for a shift in culture towards conservative values to end what they call the domination of the arts in Hungary by liberals and left-wingers. Well, it sounds like another virus going around. Maybe we need to get a vaccine and rid ourselves of this scourge. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.